Okay, so I think we're going live here. So the purpose of this video is to talk about racing rates for quadcopters. My eyes are red, not because I'm sad, but because there was a recent volcano explosion. Alright, so I'm not going to tell you what rates to use. That's not the point of this video at all. The point of this video is for you to fundamentally understand rates comprehensively. I'm going to start out with very basics. So there's going to be some parts of this that is not going to pertain to everyone, but let's just make sure we all understand this, okay? Alright, let me go ahead and plug in the default rates in betaflight. Okay, I haven't seen if the live stream is working at all, and if I'm talking to anyone. Let me see if that is actually happening. I believe so. I think people can see it. Alright, so let's get back here. So right here we have default rates for betaflight. And before we go any further, let's talk about other types of rates. Flight 1 has their own rates. Emu Flight has their own rates. Everyone says their rates are better, but ultimately all you're doing is building this line, these curves, and there's not really a lot to it. Because, you know, all the simulators use betaflight, sometimes literally running betaflight in the background like Velocidrone, and all of the rates are in betaflight rates. Even if you use other firmware, I recommend using betaflight rates if you can, and if not, well, converting them with some converters that later on I will edit into the link of this description because I'm not going to show you how to convert them. So these are the default betaflight rates, and I've got to say these are actually you know, I think incredibly well chosen. You know, they're not for racing, but they're actually really great. I don't actually fly them, so don't judge them by my flight, by the way. I haven't flown these in a while, but my point is these are actually very well chosen defaults for if you're just going to cruise around, if you want to be able to do stuff. For example, racing rates, sometimes they'll be too slow to actually be able to do a good flip. Okay, so anyway, these are the default betaflight rates, and let's break down what this all means. Okay, and you can see on the graph right here what's happening. So RC rate mainly affects the sensitivity of your sticks right around this area. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but basically the middle area. Okay, let's go ahead and change that and you'll see what I mean. Well, okay, I'm just gonna have to explain it. I don't know if you can see my mouse here at all, so we'll just have to live with that. But basically, imagine that the center 4 squares here on the rates line are what the RC rate is mainly controlling. Okay, and the super rate controls the extremes. As you can see, I'm lowering the super rate, and it didn't lower this area too much. It lowered the end of the stick movement. Okay, and separately, so this is basically a way to get a curve. Like you could, if you wanted a very linear line, like, okay, that's a pretty linear stick response. So in a way, RC rate and super rate are a way of making curve, which can be confusing to some people because Expo is also essentially the same thing, except you know, it basically just affects the whole curve and predominantly towards the middle. So one of the problems with Expo is, as you notice here, it doesn't really change the end at all, you know. So I'm going to go through different strategies of using rates, but this is the basics of how they work. Okay? Alright, let's, before we go any further, let's talk about some incredibly common misconceptions about rates, and let's just fence with those and disabuse of those notions right off the bat. One, you cannot, learn rates from other people. There is some truth to this, obviously, that rates are incredibly personal. The size of your hands, what rate you're flying, the size of the gimbals, your style of flight, your level of skill, all of that factor into what rates you should use. But I haven't checked if anyone has audio. No one has made any comments. Okay, yeah, okay, I probably do. So anyway, in a nutshell, yeah, you can't just plug and play other people's rates, and that's the whole point of this video, having you understand them. But at the same time, learning, hearing what other pilots fly can make informed decisions, especially if you're coming to the table with zero knowledge of, what, are you supposed to literally try every variation of the 3 variables? That's, a lot. I'm not going to do the mathematics for you, but if you guys know 3 of those multiplied together, you could literally spend your entire lifetime trying every rate. So you should, I guess what I'm trying to say is, other pilots' rates are a way for you to narrow down your search. For a very simple example, there's really no world-class pilot that flies extremely high rates. There's just not. So that could inform you to some of those limits. Okay, so now let's actually play with some rates. I'm on a pylons track, which you guys are going to find very interesting, but I'm gonna dispense with another common misconception about rates right off the bat, which is rates are not about your curves. It's actually about a straight line. More than anything, your rates in racing are about going straight. I'm gonna show you what I mean right now. Okay, I'm gonna crank up my rates. Something ridiculous. It doesn't have to be the same because it's going to be ridiculous, okay? Wow, super sensitive, okay? Alright, I'm not going to fly the track. I'm just going to literally try to fly a straight line, as if this were, whatchamacallit? I forget what you call it when you race straight, because I think it's dumb and I never do it. So, alright, I don't need to start a race. Okay, so watch. I'm just going to try to go straight as fast as I can with these rates out into this field, okay? Oh, man, I crashed. Okay, so why? Velocity in flying has nothing to, well, not nothing, but it's not simply a matter of your throttle. That just goes up. To get the fastest, you need to be at an angle. Okay, and then there's a precise angle which you're going to crash. And the very fastest you can go is right above that angle. Okay, so it's hard to stay in that angle. Okay, like right now I'm safe, but I could probably go a little faster, but I need to go back. Where's back? Just gonna start a race and reset to find back. But anyway, my point is, there's obviously an exact angle. Why is this not resetting? Okay. So there's obviously an exact angle that is the fastest that you could possibly fly. And a lot about drone racing is trying to stay within that. It's a risk and reward. You could fly safe, like here. Look, there's no way I'm going to crash into the ground at this angle. At this one, still I'm going down. Okay, now I'm safe. I could go faster than this. I'm just actually flying. Oh, hold on, you can't see. Stupid no return thing. Okay, I'm just full throttle ahead. Let's go a little further. If you just want to stay in a safe zone, yeah, you're not going to crash. But you could go a lot faster if you, man, these rates are insane. If you can hold that angle a little bit further. So I'm going to go back to my poker past and talk about risk and reward, okay? Almost everyone who came to me and asked me, how can I play poker better? And they would want to tell me hand histories and shit, and I didn't want to even hear about that. Poker stories are awful to listen to. Just like drone stories. No one wants to hear about your bad stories in drone racing, just the same as in poker, by the way. Everyone's dealing with bad luck. Bad luck's part of the game. Don't bring up your war stories about mid-airs, just like in poker, don't bring up your bad beats, okay? Just coming from a guy who's played professional poker, and from a guy who's not a professional drone racer, but who knows enough of the top pilots and is close enough to getting there that no one wants to hear your shit. We all deal with it, okay? So anyway, that's a little bit of a distraction. But, okay, no matter what they would say, how can I play better at poker? I'd say play fewer hands. And they're like, wait a minute, I haven't even told you anything. I'm like, yeah, that's because really 99% of people, their problem is they play too many hands. It's a risk reward, and you need to figure out how to manage it and be just on the edge of that risk reward. And it's the same with drone racing, okay? I'm gonna go beyond this whole just going straight drag racing. Yeah, that was the thing I was trying to remember that I don't like. Anyway, let me just go into some other rates. Okay, here's Evan Turner's rates. You know, he has the company 533. That's, I don't know if you guys know, but that's because named after these rates. He actually flies a pretty low RC rate and a high super rate to give, it's a pretty aggressive curve, okay? But anyway, all right. So, like I was saying, it's about, you know, staying right in that, okay? But it's not just about going straight. In drone racing, I don't know if you guys noticed, but most of the time you lose, it's not because you didn't go fast enough. That's actually very rare. It's because you made mistakes. Okay? Not even crashing, okay? For most people it's actually crashing. But I'm talking even the best people in the entire world. Every single one of them makes a mistake in a race. That no one has ever flown a track perfectly. Not once in their life. Okay? So when I talk about risk reward, it's not just this thing about holding the angle as low as you can to go straight, okay? We're going to get more into that later. It's also about risk reward, not crashing, okay? When you have higher rates, you can do certain movements faster. You know, for example, low rates will make slaloms. When you have to do a real quick, I don't have slalom here, let's pretend this is because it's real tight. You know, I have to take this pretty slow with these rates that I have now. You know, and faster rates can let you do that faster, for example. But the key thing to understand about rates is that it's resolution that we're talking about here, okay? I'm going to get into that. Rates are a matter of resolution. You're not really supposed to worry about how fast you can go around a curve with rates. It's really what resolution you can manage with consistency, okay? Because, once again, you're going to most of the time lose races because you made a mistake, not because you could possibly go a little bit faster. Okay, so I've loaded up this very simple, oh look, I'm not the top qualifier anymore, people beat me here. And I probably did that with the X class because it's so easy here. But anyway, let's put on some ghost flights. Okay, let's look at mine. Okay, this is my, I don't know whatever ghost flight I'm flying here. But look, if you look at my my sticks, I'm basically spending the entire race, the entire lap in full throttle. Let's look at that again a little bit in half time, okay? So look at my throttle. I am literally not taking it off ever, okay? And that was obviously for a track like this, that's what makes you fast. This track was hugely informative early in the pandemic when I, you know, researched rates obsessively, trying incredible amounts of combinations, which was kind of the genesis and motivation of me making this video. But this rate was one of the most, this track was one of the most informative ones for that because I realized that I simply could not beat my ghost if I didn't lower my rates. I'm going to simulate that by not using my best ghost. I'm going to turn on time attack toggle previous lap. So I'm going to fly a bad lap to clear out my good laps, and we're going to put in, let's put in, look, to not even be crazy, to not try to show this with something ridiculous, let's put in stock rates, okay? So these are the stock rates that come with betaflight. Okay, so I'm going to put in a slow lap here and just, we're going to ignore all the fast guys because I'm going to be flying slow, bad rates, and we're just going to focus on my guy. Actually, for the next one, I'll put a real slow racer against us so he's not in, well, the fast ones aren't in either. Okay, so I've just reset my ghost. Okay, where's my ghost? Let's change it so there's not a bunch of racers so it's easy to compare. How do I do that here? Let us find a really slow ghost who's not going to be in our way. Too far. Okay. Oh, flying with a tiny hawk. Okay, someone racing with a tiny whoop. Alright, so you're mainly going to see I could have actually left Nemesis and flown with just Ghost, and that would have been easier. But we are doing this, and we're doing it with previous lap. Okay, so watch this. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and fly this and put down some ghosts. Okay. Okay. I'm not going very fast. I mean, I'm full throttle the entire time, but I'm adjusting my altitude constantly and losing speed. Okay, there's my ghost. Okay, I'm gonna continue to compete with my ghost. Okay, and watch, to beat him, it's really just about managing the angle better, lower. I crashed. Okay, so anyway, all right. Look at what I just did. Okay, I'm gonna do it again so you guys don't think I'm just throwing it. You know, this is going to be an earnest, best faith effort at beating my ghost 3 laps in a row as good as I can on these rates. Default betaflight. Okay, so I'm kicking its ass because I've already practiced. I'm warming up. So that's really not rates we're seeing, which is another difficulty in learning rates. You know, the more you fly a track, the better you will be. So changing rates, sometimes you won't be able to tell. Okay. So I'm not crashing into the ground. You know, I'm doing okay, theoretically. Oh, I thought it was over. Okay. So I wonder how this compares to my fastest times with a good rate. It's 43 seconds. When my fastest time is 28 seconds. Okay, so look at the difference. 28 seconds is what I've done a long time ago when I'm probably better now. And I was full throttle the whole time, but I hit 43 seconds. The difference was in the fact that I wasn't always at the perfect angle. And the way to keep myself in the perfect angle more often is resolution. Okay, so let's talk about resolution a little bit here, okay? Resolution is what I'm talking about is when you move your stick, okay, there's a lot of meanings to resolution. Okay, for example, you can have gimbals with shitty resolution. Toy grade radio is one of the biggest reasons to upgrade is because they actually have bad resolution. If your actual gimbal is going 10, 20, 30, that's way worse than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you know, the more sensitive your gimbals are, the better. Okay, so that's one part of resolution. But when I talk about resolution when it comes to rates, it's as simple as this. Okay, watch. Your maximum degrees per second here, the max velocity as they're calling it here, your stick is spreading across that entire range. Okay? 666 up, 666 down, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So if you were to lower that, I'm going to do it dramatically. Okay, that what ends up happening is your look, see how the graph expands when you do them all. Okay, that, you know, you're now moving your stick from one end to the other is much smaller steps. It's like you've magnified it and you have more resolution. That's what I mean by a resolution when it comes to rates. And this is really what 100% of it comes down to. You're not supposed to go out there and do loops and see how you feel. You have to get used to rates and you're going to have to learn to feel. And I will go over that soon. The common myth of not wanting, you know, you should never change your rates. You know, muscle memory, where they relate in rates, because interestingly, it's really at the extreme ends where muscle memory comes into play. In the beginning, you're mostly reacting to what you see visually, not memorizing it. It's when you do full deflections, like, okay, I want to do a half flip. I know that is exactly half a second full deflection. Okay, that muscle memory does come into play. So I'm going to talk about that in one part of this discussion. I didn't prepare any notes for this discussion, so it's all over the place, just trying to remember everything I can. Hopefully you guys will get something out of this. If not, I'll have to do a better video. So anyway, my point is when you lower the resolution, which is essentially the maximum the degrees per second, to make you guys understand that, what that means is if you turn, let's say, roll full to the right for 1 second, and you have 360 degrees per second, it means it will do an exact 360 degrees, okay? If you're at in 600, well, if you want to do that, you need to do it in half a second. You know, if you have in 600, you know, I didn't do, not exactly, but anyway, so that's what it means. So I'm on this simple track to show you something real simple. Watch. I'm going to use rates lower than I would ever use. I'm going to put these, I would only use these on drag races or straight tracks like this. But the whole point is to show you that by giving myself a ridiculously low amount of, that'll be fine, 62 for everything. I'm going to go into symmetric rates versus non-symmetric rates later, okay, as well. So, yeah, I'm covering everything. It's comprehensive but disorganized. Okay, so look at these rates. Incidentally, I started racing with rates about this low, and one key thing for anyone out there, if you're a beginner and you're racing, fly super low rates and raise them. I ran into people, a friend of mine, like, nah, I want to race with whatever the pros race at, and I'll just get, learn them versus having to learn multiple rates. Well, he ended up learning slower than me, who just went with slower rates and raised them as you go. So the secret, I'm really talking about rates for people who already fly. If you do not fly very well, just make very low rates for racing, okay? All right, I will cover racing for rates for freestyle very briefly in this video because there's an entire amount to that. It's mostly taste, but there are some objective truths to that I will just go over that might influence you in racing, and there's also questions like whether you should use two different rates, one for racing, one for freestyle. There's a bunch of people who say no, you always use the same. There's kind of rate, fundamentalists. I don't agree with that, but I'm going to cover both sides fairly there. Okay, so here, super low rates. Let's go against my last time and see if I can beat it. What did I do? 43 or something like that. Do I still have the leaderboard? Okay, look, 43 seconds. Let's see if I can beat that. Okay, just by lowering my rates. It's a little hard to get used to, so let me get used to him, but I already narrow it. Okay, I can see mine in front of me. I can already see where I can gain angle on him. So here, this will be good since I started out bad. Okay, that's my last one. I'm beating him already. I'm still I shouldn't have talked. I was going to say I'm still adjusting a lot more than I should be. Okay, so I'm going to try that again, let's go. I was kind of warming up to them, so now I'm doing better, adjusting less, but still micro adjusting. It might not be visible to you. Because it's just you can only see what's happening and you can't feel it like I can, since I'm flying. But I'm not flying perfectly right now. It looks okay, but I'm actually constantly adjusting and not flying a perfect line. There's time to be gained across this. Okay, so let's see what I do here. All right, so look what I did. I did nothing more than lower the fuck out of my I'm sorry, guys. I shouldn't fucking cuss. Out of my rates, and I lowered my time a bunch of seconds. Now, caveat: I flew this track an extra time, so maybe I got a little bit better for more practice. But there's some truth to that. But more of that just came from lowering my rate. So now let's pause and see what I just told you, because this is the key thing that no one understands that I almost talk about. A few people I've seen, Colby, yes, FPV, he's mentioned it, but few people realize that rates really affect straightaways more than they do curves. Whatever you need to do in a curve, you're going to figure it out. I've never flown these rates before, and look, I can hold pretty tight to this thing right now. Because I'm actually mainly doing throttle. I should turn on, how do you turn on the throttle thing so that you guys can see that? Is it T? It's not T, that's trails. I hate looking this up. Alright, where are we? Fire a weapon. I'd love to do that soon. Visualize controller inputs, M. Alright. Alright, so now you can see this. Okay, so, rates don't affect your ability to do stuff like, get a good a grip going on something like this. This is actually, you're doing most of that with throttle anyway, which I'll cover some other time in racing tips, how much throttle you use in turning. Like, for example, when I'm doing, ladders, I'm doing a little bit of input with roll and yaw, but most of my, like watch, okay, I'm just gonna go in circles here. Most of my, if I want it to be tighter or looser, a lot of this comes from the throttle. If you look, my roll is not moving at all, but if I want to change my circle wider, here wider, okay, tighter, I'm not moving roll at all, it was all throttle. Okay, so anyway, we'll go into more of that later. I've done it before, but forgot what I was talking about. Yeah, volcano, I blame the volcano. Alright, so I guess what so I was talking, the key thing that most people don't understand, your rates should be, really what you're looking for is how fast can you go as fast as you can and still feel comfortable, you know? So, well, I don't even know what rates I was flying there. Look, so I'm flying this, okay, I would consider this pretty much the low end of racing rates, by the way. You could actually, let me race a track with this. Let me switch tracks here to, what was I flying recently? Okay, this one, okay. It's going to be hard to, these rates are too slow for some of the things I need to do here, but you can see that even with the rates this slow, it'll work. Okay, loading, let's just race, that's not the one, I've never raced this before. I don't even know the track, so I'm not going to waste you guys' time, you know, figuring out where to go. So anyway, this is the last thing I used on Velocidrone last week. Okay, so here, I'm going to run this track for you guys with very low rates. These are the rates I used my very first month of racing. And I'll show you, okay, let's see how it goes. I blow out a bit because I don't have enough speed. I mean, you know, degrees per second. I crashed and clipped that. But anyway, you know, for a beginner, that's not a bad lap. Okay, you know, if you're using those type of rates. So if you're a beginner or someone learning, lower your rates. Like I was saying in poker, you know, most people should play a few hands. 90% of people learning to race should lower their rates. Okay? Alright, so I'm going to go into something else about rates, okay? Let's meander into that. Okay, let's talk about the relationship between high RC rate and low RC rate, okay? So we already established that this mainly controls the middle and makes the middle more sensitive, okay? Alright, let's do this. Okay, so I'm going to make it about the same degrees per second, but making it, you know, higher RC rate and now lower super rate, okay? So same, this is theoretically the same, let's go to pylons just since you guys could see that flying a little bit better. In terms of, you know, actual progress on a track, and not new. All right, so let's. Oh yeah, we're gonna erase my. We're gonna erase something slow. So that we don't see, why am I doing this? I should just leave Nemesis and go to just single player, and then we can really focus on my Ghost. Speaking of Ghost, racing with other people's Ghosts and Nemesis is incredibly educational. I recommend it, especially so you can learn to fly with distractions, so you can see other people's lines, all sorts of things. Racing your own Ghost is what really where it's at. Okay, focus on you. So even in Nemesis mode, I fly that all the time, but I'm mainly flying against my own Ghost. Let's go to single player, where we can just fly against my own Ghost. Alright, previous lap. Oh, okay, so for reference, I'm going to restart this. What I did was, last time I had low RC rate, high super rate, saying degrees per second. Now I've raised the RC rate, which as I explained, which means the very beginning of my movements will be sensitive, and lower the super rate. So what happens is the line, as you can see up here, is more linear. Let me talk about linear real quickly. All right, this is gonna be controversial for some people. A lot of people like linear rates, and they think that because they want the predictability. Okay, there's absolute truth to that, but here's when you take it too far. The predictability problem is, let's go ahead and make an example out of this. Put in 2. It doesn't let me 1. Okay, see this line up here, the red line? You can barely see it because it's just off the graph. Yeah, so traveling along your stick, you shove it up that far, and all of a sudden, bam! It shoots up very unpredictably. Yeah, that's undesirable. More linear than that is desirable. Now, some people take that to an extreme and say that they want a perfectly straight line. This is subjective matter, and I'm not going to say that their taste is completely wrong, but I think that they're objectively leaving something on the table. The most minute curve to your rates can make a difference. Even I have found times when even just adding that much Expo, 0.01 was what I needed. Okay, so and that doesn't really change the predictability of your sticks that much. It just makes you fly better. Okay, so another myth in rates to bite the dust is that perfectly linear rates are where it's at. Nope. You don't want them, there is a relationship, there's some truth to that. Again, you cannot have a ridiculous curve where it just shoots up. Imagine if your rate was like this. Yeah, that sucked. But no, getting a tiny curve on your rates helps. And speaking of this Expo trick here, I actually heard of this from Alex Vanover racing, that sometimes before that I'd never used an Expo smaller than 10. Okay, because it's barely noticeable. But then I noticed, when I had rates that I liked but just felt like I needed a little bit more resolution, a little bit more, that little bit of Expo, even just 0.01, was enough. Okay, so anyway, I don't tend to use Expo just because RC rate and super rate controls the curve as well. Generally when I use Expo, it's something like that, tweaking it like that, giving it a tiny bit of extra softness. You'll get at that level. You shouldn't do this because someone else tells you to. You should do this because you have the rates you want and you test it and you like it. Okay, so once again, what were we doing here? We're gonna fly this right with instead of having low rate and high super rate, the opposite. All right, waiting for it to start. I press start. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I want you to notice some things there. Okay, obviously I started out really bad. I couldn't even finish a lap. I don't know if I even got through a gate. And I'm going to talk about some things that are going on here. Okay. A little bit more used to the rate. I haven't ever flown in my life now. I'm doing a little bit better. Okay, but the guy's still ahead of me, and I'm doing more corrections than him. Well, that's just my last lap. But anyway, I'm not going to beat my last time. I can tell you right now, just from looking at how I'm flying without even knowing my times. And that's because I'm changing my angle more. I'm making, where I should put my 6 back on. I'm making constant corrections to my pitch. Okay, I mean, it wasn't that much worse, but it was worse, and it was because of those little micro corrections. So going back to rates, let's talk about this. Okay, most pilots, racing pilots, fly rates, RC rates around 1. Some of them will lower it this much, some of them will raise it a little bit. Honestly, a lot of them do that. I think Alex Vanover, the last rates I knew he was flying was something like. I don't know, something like 485, and one with one Expo, something like that, across the board. Okay, and that's pretty common. So let's talk about one of the big things I learned from trying Evan Turner's rates, which I think I have somewhere here. No. Okay, let's make them again. So Evan Turner flies this. And once again, don't copy people's rates. Learn from them. Okay, try to understand them better. I was just playing with his rates recently, and they weren't working for. Yeah, first I loved them. I went back to them 2 weeks ago. I switched just in time for my last race because I was, after a while I was actually getting worse. So anyway, okay, here's Evan Turner's rates. He has relatively low RC rate, and one of the things that he compensates that with is relatively high overall degrees per second, which makes, so what happens is his very beginning of his sticks are very not sensitive, but then he gets a decent curve up so you don't feel like you're flying with mud. If you fly with very low rates, your quad actually feels stiff, like something is holding it back, and it's just, it's slow. Alright, so okay, a couple things about these rates. One of the things I love about this is this. You can actually fly very fast, okay, because it's not very sensitive. Remember the M. Okay, so you can see my 6. Okay, watch. I can fly this track at full throttle, even though these rates are higher than the rates I fly in terms of degrees per second. And the reason why is because the center of the stick, the center areas of the stick are not very sensitive. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but Evan flies really fast. And let me try. That's hard to explain. Okay, let's compare the way Alex Vanover and Evan Turner fly. They're both very fast, but Evan Turner flies very fast, and Alex Vanover flies very clean. Thomas Wittmata, very clean. Evan is a little bit more on that, a little bit out of control level of fast. And I think his rates have something to do with it. Basically, when you fly with rates that have very low RC rate, you can actually hold a very high top speed. You end up correcting a little bit more, and it's a little bit less fluid because you're making bigger finger movements for things. But at this straight level, it's actually very fast. I was thinking about it recently, but his move to DRL is really perfect for his rates because DRL quads, they're larger quads, and it's you have a lot more straightaways and less very fast turning and tight spaces. It's more of full speed ahead, so it's really useful. All right, so I don't know if I've made my point clearly, but the sensitivity of the very beginning of your sticks is really what affects how fast you can hold your flight, based on your skill level. Okay. The max velocity here. Now this is something that actually let's go out here. This has a lot to do with muscle memory. You can change the other stuff and you'll adapt to it pretty quickly. But changing when you panic, you're crashing, you try to do something fast. I can't simulate trying to crash very well or panicking. What I mean, like not knowing what I'm doing. But anyway, when you do certain movements, muscle memory does come into play. Like for example, let me see if I can remember. Okay, the muscle memory I'm trying to show here is exactly half a flip, half a flip. Okay, so that was all muscle memory because I'm at full, right? But when I'm flying like this here, going through this gap, oh, that was a weird graphics glitch. But there's stuff I can't see that I crash into. But when I'm doing this, muscle memory doesn't really come into play at all. Let me show you what I mean. That's not there. I'm gonna dramatically change this, okay? Alright. Fuck it. Let's make it high and weird and all over the place. I remember I need to talk about symmetric versus non-symmetric. That's huge. Alright, so watch. Now I'm gonna fly through the tree, slow proximity stuff. There's something I can't see there. What can I use? Maybe this is a better example. Okay, that's actually a great example, my crash. So I flew rates I've never flown before, super high, super different from what I just flew through the proximity stuff just fine because I'm not actually using muscle memory there. I'm reacting to what I see. If I'm too low, I move, you know. Now, as soon as I tried to do kind of a flip coming up, going out backwards, I crashed because that's muscle memory, and I did what I'm used to on other rates and I crashed. So my point is this: the degrees per second has a lot to do with your muscle memory, but the rates don't. You can play around with that and learn a lot. All right, so now let's go into symmetrical versus not symmetrical. Okay, so first of all, let me go to my rates because they're not symmetrical. So look at this. This is what I fly right now. Again, do not just pick my rates and use them. I'm just going to explain my thinking behind it, okay? So, all right, remember I told you I started out around 360 degrees per second. I went all the way up onto the 600s. I tried everything, okay? What I'm on right here is... you know, I basically lowering this a couple points is kind of like Expo, but really just in the center area. And I'm using a pretty low degrees per second, you know, for a pretty good resolution. My style of flight right now is really not super clean. It's really just fast and, you know, clean enough to where, you know, I'm getting most of my gains from just going faster than the people around my skill level versus doing things tighter is what I mean by that. And as you can see, I'm not using symmetric rates. I'm not using the exact same rates across the board. And let's talk about some good and bad things about that. Here are some things that I do and do not like about symmetric rates and non-symmetric rates. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about one thing that doesn't matter at all, which is yaw. Okay, pitch and roll have a relationship. Okay, I have a quad here. Okay, so 360 degrees per second this way is the same as 360 degrees this way. And since you sometimes have to combine movements, then being symmetrical is something that your brain can process a little more easily. Okay, now don't get me wrong, even if you make them non-symmetrical, you just make up for the difference and you adjust, okay? But my point is, if you're doing something you've never practiced before, you have, you know, and you're just, you know, one thing about symmetrical rates is, it's kind of nice that they're the same. Now, why not symmetrical rates for yaw? Alright, there's really no relationship between yaw and anything else. Okay, so for example, on your yaw stick, you've got yaw and throttle, right? Throttle is not degrees per second. It's just 0 to 100%. There's no relationship between how much you go up and down on throttle and how much you yaw. So, one thing I've noticed a lot of people do is, let's go to some default rates here. Okay, let's actually go to some like racing rates. Okay, so some pretty standard racing rates would be something like this. Okay, 500 degrees per second or lower. Okay, so let's start with that. A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll actually lower the hell out of their yaw. And this is interesting. I'm going to show you something here. They're going to go back to that same thing, and this actually does help. I still don't recommend this personally. I mean, I don't use this personally, but it does help. So one of the things, the reason why this helps is because your throttle stick you're using the most in racing. So if your yaw is super sensitive, which you actually don't use very much in acro mode, since when you're tilted this far, most of your turning, as you can see from my sticks, is with your roll. So since you don't use very much yaw, a lot of people lower the hell out of their yaw. And it has a similar effect to what I was talking about earlier of giving more resolution at low levels. So as you can see here, my rates are not low RC rates except for yaw, and it's, you know, they're all higher and yaw is low. All right, now let's give this a run, and I'm going to show you this actually does help a little bit. So one of the reasons why it's helping, okay, so let's talk about this. It's because my movement on my throttle is affecting my stability less. Okay, my yaw movements are smaller when I move my throttle. Okay, now let's talk about another reason why it's helping. I don't actually need to use crash, but anyway, let's go back with bad. No, I want to fix my props. So one of the reasons why it's helping is it's because it's isolating some of my activity. Because I have such slow yaw, I don't need to worry about controlling yaw as much as I did before. It wasn't a great example of time in case you're trying to compare it that way, but it's not an objective way you should be feeling this, okay? So anyway, yaw helps because I can go very fast with that because I've isolated, you know, what I have to do to fewer things and stabilized an axis. I don't want to load another track just to show you where I think yaw falters, but what it really comes down to is some turns are it's much easier to do some type of turns where you have to do really weird small changes when you have faster yaw. So I don't actually think yaw is, if you're going to isolate and take a non-symmetrical approach, I don't actually think that's what you should do personally. There are plenty of fast pilots who do that though, so don't, you know, once again, it works to some degree. So, but what I'm going to show you something else which I actually advocate a little bit more. All right, let's talk about what you're doing when you're racing. Okay, so yaw you don't use, so when you race you're about, you know, this tilt, and you're slowing down and speeding up by changing your pitch. You're changing your altitude by a mixture of throttle and pitch, and you're turning through roll. Okay, there's also yaw involved, and I like the faster yaw because it's usually very small movements that are subtle, and when you have to use large finger movements, at least for my sake, it's harder to do those smoothly. But anyway, let's talk about isolating pitch right after I get a drink of water. I'm getting a dry mouth. I'll have a volcano dust from the explosion. Alright, so let's talk about pitch. I don't know if you noticed it in racing, but you're going like this all the time, but you're not supposed to do this all the time. And I see a lot of people having problems with pitch control and throttle control. Even the fastest people I know around here, a lot of times if I beat them, they actually flew cleaner than me, they did tighter lines, but they didn't really maintain pitch as fast as they could, so I could go a little bit faster. And then with beginners, you know, see a lot of correction. So isolating on pitch, which I'm going to do it in the rates as you can see here. Let's do what we did to the, I don't know what the hell it was, but let's, you know, make pitch. So now we've kind of isolated pitch and made it much lower, degrees per second, much less sensitive. Because you don't change altitude that much in racing, I think this is, you know, a more objectively useful axis to isolate on if you are going to use non-symmetric rates. Okay, so the reason why is because let me get used to these rates I've never flown before a little bit first. Alright, so one of the reasons why, and I'm still not used to them. Alright. Okay, so I'm getting better. Let's go ahead and do the times here and see if I can beat my time with from last time by doing this. I'm correcting there, and that's bad. But basically, my corrections here are smoother. I'm going kind of up and down versus on longer planes than before, and I'm holding the throttle way for more firmly stuck, you know, pedal to the throttle to the plastic or whatever. Alright, so see there, look, that was one of my faster times tonight on these rates that I'm experimenting with, and a lot of that came from isolating the pitch. Okay, the pitch allowed me to go faster. Okay, so let's talk about some other stuff now. Okay, well, before that, let's continue to talk about symmetrical rates and advantages there. Okay, so let me load another track. I don't know if I haven't flown much recently. Maybe go with a favorite and see if there's anything that has something I remember. Okay, it's Texas. Chances that have a corkscrew. Who has a cork? I think it does. Well, I can just find it. I don't need to fly the track. I'll find the obstacles. Okay, so the track is far. Well, we'll go. So now let's talk about actually flying some other obstacles and how things can help. Okay. Okay. All right. So here, for example, you're supposed to do a corkscrew, right, on these gates. What rates am I flying so I can have some idea of what I'm doing? Okay, so here I've got LOPE. Why don't we just go to kind of what I fly, which is pretty similar. Okay, so here's what I fly. It's actually the same, rates per second. And what I'm going to show you is, you know, when you do a corkscrew, you're actually mixing. I'm blowing out here while I talk and try to look at my sticks at the same time. But if you pay attention to that, and I don't, you're actually mixing. When you do a movement like this, you're mixing, you know, pitch, roll, and things like that. So when they're not symmetrical, you have to actually get used to the offset. You know, like for example, if I want to do a power loop, okay, here, this is much faster in roll than this. See, one, slow. So when I have to do movements, oh, this actually has one like this. That one there, I forget, I think you go back here. That movement there, it's not symmetrical, so you have to, you know, you have to learn that offset. So that is, you know, kind of one of the downsides to non-symmetrical rates. And let's go into some other ones. Higher rates versus not, whether you should use multiple rates. Okay, there are people who say you should always use the same rates, and there's definitely some value to building on things. Like for example, every time I've changed rates before races, it's been a bad idea. However, you know, if I practice with rates a couple weeks, I actually get used to them. So I don't know if everyone is that way or some people are not. I have the feeling that most people can just get used to rates. Every quad I've ever flown actually has switches for different rates. You know, if it's even racing quads, you know, I have my main rate and then my experimental rate. With other quads, I'll have, you know, a racing, you know, a slower rate and then a freestyle rate, you know. Because speaking of freestyle, look at my rates. You can't really freestyle with them. Look how slow that flip is. I mean, you can do very, where's that place I like to freestyle? Hold on. So here's a good. I'm going to actually show you the difference between, you know, my rates. So these are my racing rates. They're a bit too slow for certain types of freestyle, especially what I'm going to try to do right now. See, I just couldn't get the flip done before I crashed. You know, there's that's one downside to this. You know, if you want to use just one rate for both, for example, I found that Evans rates actually work really good for slow freestyle. And once again, freestyle. You know what? We were talking about non-symmetric rates, and we might as well segue right into freestyle because there's a lot to say about that. Okay, one, a lot of people in freestyle use non-symmetric rates. Let's explain why. Who was it who said it recently in a video? It was Ledrid. Okay, he thinks a lot about freestyle and is a much better mind than me for this. And one of the things I learned from him from one of his videos was that a flip, you know, is way more disorienting than a roll. Think about it. When you flip, what happens? Everything you see goes away and then comes back. When you roll, everything stays in view. The center actually doesn't move very much. The sides do. Okay? So he was talking about how he liked using slower rates for pitch than for roll because it's more cinematic. Okay? So that's another example for why you might want to use different rates. Okay, now let's talk about freestyle a little tiny bit. And one thing I liked about Evans rates was that for the slow freestyle that I'm about to do, it actually kind of works really good. Even at you don't need. All right, let's talk about degrees for a second. The style of flight for freestyle has a ton to do with degrees per second. I'm going to fly like this and then I'm going to crank it up and I'll show you what I mean, okay? So let me try to get used to these real quick for a while. No, not very used to them. Until I can go under this bench, I wouldn't say I'm used to them. No. No. Okay, I'm starting to feel it a bit. Well, those are still pretty low benches. Okay, so I did it. Alright, so I'm used to it now. Here's one thing I like about these rates. You can actually freestyle with them pretty well. I'm bad at freestyle, so don't judge me on that. But what I mean is, you can do a pretty, like, okay, here's a pretty standard trick. I'm going to do a power loop, and then I'm going to do something that makes it look a lot more cinematic by doing a flip afterward, okay? So let me see if I can power loop into this other hole. But here's a power loop normally with just, okay, that's nice. But now let's do this. I did it wrong. Let's do it again. Okay. So power loop it. That was a bad example, but let me try to explain what I mean. When you do a standard power loop, one thing you can do that make it look nice is do a half front flip forward and bring things back into view. Whenever I need to warm up to freestyle, see that? But anyway, I'm not a good freestyle pilot. I need to practice stuff before I can. I don't have any muscle memory for it, so it takes me a little while to get things. But anyway, my point is, I don't know if you're noticing, but these, full deflection, half seconds, like, oh, here's another one. Okay, just if I'm just freestyle, trying to fly on the ground, and I want to do a quick half flip, it's fast enough to do that, whereas mine aren't. Okay, so that's another thing to consider if you want to do, if you want to do freestyle and race with the same rates, you might want to use higher rates than the very low ones. But personally, I think you should also consider just having different rates. I've never had a problem with that. I've never had a problem with oh, my battery ran out. I've never had a problem with having different rates and adapting to them. I actually feel like I learned about flying based off of that. From experimenting with different rates, I actually feel like I've learned more about flying by trying extreme things that other people use. One of them, like that thing about using your throttle to turn, I didn't really learn until I tried something like that. So anyway, let's see if I have any more to cover with rates. I think this has been a long video. I'm sure no one's watching it anymore. Let's go into, just a couple of other things here, okay? So, all right. So we talked about, don't take other people's rates and plug them in. Figure out your own. It depends on your gimbals. It depends on a lot of things. We talked about non-symmetric rates, isolating pitch, isolating yaw to try to get some advantages, and there's some ups and downs to that. Almost everything in life is a trade-off, not just, you don't have any pure good things and pure bad things. So then, I didn't show you a bunch of people's rates that I know about because that's really not the point. I hope you just kind of understand, and what you get out of this video is you should try to fly in racing, rates that you can really go full throttle at or fly really fast at. And if you struggle with that, maybe lower your rates a bit. You'll feel weird and you have to get used to it, but you'll have more resolution on your throttle, you'll have more resolution on your pitch, you'll make fewer mistakes. It's not just about holding that straight. Remember, in a race, fewer mistakes usually means you win. So if you can take nothing else away from this, it is this. Rates are risk. Higher rates are higher risk. It can enable some certain maneuvers that lower rates cannot handle, but for the most part, that's not what you're limited by. And treating this as a risk-reward situation is the way to go. I think this has gone on a long time. I know I'm forgetting a ton of things I wanted to talk about, but maybe I'll come up with them later. If anyone has any questions, I'll do a follow-up video to this and do a better job than just this rambling one. I hope this was informative to some people. Remember what I'm taking. If you take nothing else away from this, lower your rates until you feel like you can really, really ride without having to constantly correct. And as you get better, race them maybe, and don't be afraid of changing, experimenting with rates, except right before a race. Don't do that, wait till a race. As soon as you're done the race, start playing with stuff. Set up a switch, so you can easily switch rates and fly and try different things on the same quad without having to plug into a computer. I didn't talk about one thing that's really important. You may even want to end up choosing different rates based off of the track you're going to fly. Like a simple example, I'm going to take this to an extreme. Those pylon tracks that I was flying, I would just lower my rates way below that I normally do, because like I said, it's really just how much can you just peg it at the right angle and have the vector exactly the way you want. With other very technical courses, you know, I might need a little bit more, you know, more speed on my sticks and the relation to the quad movement. So, you know, if you have a track that's runs really fast, so to speak, where more of the track you can make up time just by going faster than by the technical parts where you slow down, sometimes that might be a case of lowering your rates a little bit, or you know, instead of lowering your, I actually recommend kind of sticking to the degrees per second, and you know, if you want to soften it up and make it so you can go a little faster, lower your RC rate and raise the super rate to keep it the same, and then you can go a little bit faster. I guess you know, if you have a track where you need to be making a lot of fast movements, you know, maybe you want to raise the RC rate and lower the super rate. Okay. There was something else that I wanted to say. What was it? We'll just probably have to come for another video unless I can remember it right away. Yeah, I think that's all for now, guys. I didn't really prepare very much for this. I'll probably talk more about this in the future, but I've been meaning to do this rates video forever, never getting around to it. People keep asking me questions locally in Costa Rica, and I tell them, yeah, one day I'll explain it. It's a little complicated to do in a WhatsApp message, but this is what I got for now. So yeah, guys, have fun playing with your rates. Lower them, raise them as you feel that your rates are holding you back. But the kind of secret to pure velocity, you know, in flying straight is you know, being able to fly, you know, for your ability the rates to match your ability. So why don't we leave it at that, guys, and we'll talk another time, hopefully.